続いてのプレゼンターはエイドリアン・リーさんです。Now, please welcome our next presenter, Mr. Adrian Lee. The floor is yours.
皆様おはようございます。外国人なんですけど、大体英語で話しますね、今日は。本日のオープンソースがキャリア形成にどのように貢献できるかについてお話します。じゃあ、今から英語で、すいません。So I'm going to speak in English for most of this because I'm not Japanese, but I do live in Tokyo, so please find me if you like. Today we're going to talk about how to supercharge your career with open source. And I think it's a very important topic that sometimes, especially I find in Asia, we don't really talk about as much. So let's get into it. So, 90% of the code that you write basically already exists, right? Especially in this world of AI and everything, we are actually writing a lot of code that, before the age of AI, we've been basically doing a lot of copy and pasting, tweaking, making things work. I think a lot of the people here can understand what I'm saying about this. So, how can you set yourself apart? Why is this important? And, I would argue that, in the world of today with all the LLMs and everything, it's even more important to focus on open source because the missing part is really the human element rather than the actual code that you're writing at this point. So the human connection, that's what we're talking about here. This is, does anyone recognize these two people? この人たちが誰か知ってますか? It's, well, maybe not because these are not recent pictures. It's Sir Isaac Newton and Galileo Galilei. These are two people that actually come from very different places, right? They are, from different countries, speak different languages, but they were able to, collaborate with people with different languages and different cultures, right? So this is actually the original kind of open source. I mean, you can argue it was even older than that, actually, but this is one of the more early examples of open source, right? Science in the 1600s, scholars like Newton and Galileo shared ideas in Latin, right? Latin was kind of like their GitHub, right? They were able to share things, across different cultures, regardless of what language and what culture they lived in every single day for their day-to-day lives. And this was the common language of European academics. Of course, there were actually earlier examples like Arabic, for example, or Chinese, way back. But I think in terms of differences in languages and being able to communicate really quickly with the Renaissance and all, this is a really good example. And this, of course, led to the Enlightenment, because when people work together across cultures, across different ways of thinking, we lead to much better ideas and much more productivity as well. So, the most important idea is that collaboration accelerates innovation. And this is always the case. It has always been the case because, to me, I feel like it's just a fact of life. It just makes sense, right? It's better that we work together than not work together. But what is open source? Let's talk about that, right? Wikipedia defines it, of course, and this is a moving target. Wikipedia says open source is source code that is made freely available for possible modification and redistribution, right? That's kind of the three tenets that are quite important. And if you think about it, that's also the case with academia as well, right? Well, to some degree anyway. Like in terms of scientific papers, technical papers, those are things that we want to publish in the public and be able to read. Of course, there's Elsevier and all these different paywalls that make it a little hard, but on the most part, we try to have things that are available that we can share what we discover about the world, right? So this is a brief summary of the topics I'm going to touch on. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get over all this in 20 minutes, but we'll try our best. So why open source? Why should you do open source? I'm going to go a little bit faster here, if that's okay. Skill building, portfolio building, and career and network building. It's really just, if you think about it, it's kind of a little bit of all about career as well, but I'm trying to break it up a little bit. So, working in open source allows you to learn from real-world code bases, things that are actually, working in the real world and actually mature. You can also work with some of the industry's top experts. I remember the first time I went to a programming conference, it was, I was meeting people that I thought was really amazing because they pushed out code that I thought was, things I've never seen before, very novel, very interesting. And of course, you want to stay updated with industry trends, right? I think and I've worked in a private company before, it's very easy to be stuck in your own stack, and then you go to a conference and people are basically speaking a different language because the industry might have moved on to different techniques and technology stacks. Portfolio building, right? In terms of career, if you are earlier in your career, or even if you're later in your career, a great way to build yourself, your career, is to have a portfolio. And I think programmers are very much like designers, especially with AI these days. We're basically in the same boat, right? We want to create a personality for ourselves that is unique when we try to interview for the next job, or even maybe even not jobs, but in terms of what you are able to do for your startup, and for your clients, for example. It's really important, right, to be able to show people exactly what you're able to do, exactly what you pushed out, right? That is something that I think is really important, because you can demonstrate real impact in there, and you can highlight diverse skills as well. Like for me personally, I remember putting a lot of functional programming type of things into my code, not because I wanted to show it off, but I just really like those things, and sometimes I would point to that, and I think people can relate with me on some of those things. Career network building. Of course, we're here today at a conference, right? Friday morning. There's actually more people than I expected, I'll be honest. Connecting with the global community is really important. I do live in Japan, but it's always nice to see people come in from different places. Professional opportunities. Many people start their speaking careers due to open source. You see me here right now, right? Mentors and mentees, of course. That's just, in general, you can meet a lot of people that can help you, and you can help others. Here are some projects, actually, that are quite famous, I would say. Most people know most of these projects. I hope you guys know what Ethereum is. I don't know if you ever had this thought, but when you were a child, did you ever think maybe like one day I can work on the Windows source code, or like the Microsoft Excel, right? Well, you know what? That's not actually possible, right? Because it's closed source, it's proprietary. But you can actually, literally, right now, today, you can actually, of course, there's an approval process, but you can actually push code to potentially things in Ethereum. You can work on TensorFlow, you can work on Firefox, you can work on Linux, and you can actually make your mark on some of these projects. And I think it's something that we don't value as much as we should. So yes, please take a picture. These are important things that I think, if we don't put ourselves into the position of pushing code, then, who else, right? So this is my personal journey. This is one of my first open source contributions. I was originally a front-end developer after law school. That's a whole other story. But basically, I wanted to create a website that used certain icons. And at the time, this is about 12 years ago, one of the most popular libraries was called Font Awesome. And it was a bunch of CSS that gives you quite interesting font-based icons. And there was an icon I wanted to use, and that icon was not available in 4.2.0. And I was using actually the Meteor.js framework at the time, so it had its own package system that wrapped this CSS file, right? You can see it's really quite simple, actually. But then there's this library that didn't have the icon I wanted, so I went in there and I changed one character. I went from 4.2 to 4.3. That was one of my first open source contributions. But you know what? That was great. I didn't even write anything for the issue, right? And he just gave me like a thumbs up, and that's it, right? So, honestly, I don't even know how many keystrokes all this was, but the fact that I was able to do something that was valuable and that other people thought was valuable, really gave me a huge boost in terms of my confidence and also my ability to kind of engage with other people. Has anyone here heard of the book Mastering Ethereum by Andreas Antonopoulos? Maybe, yeah, maybe. So my name's in that book. Why? Because I added a sentence. You know, it's hilarious, right? Well, more than one sentence. I think it's 3 sentences. But I basically, when 721 came out, I added a definition for what is an NFT. This is way back. I think maybe even like 6, 7 years ago now. But I was like, hey, you know, there's this new thing called NFT. Let me just put a paragraph in there. I put it in there, and now I'm on a list of contributors. And sometimes I remember actually going to a bookstore on a first date, and I said, hey, look, this is the book where my name is in it. And I opened the book, and then my name was in there because they listed all the open source contributors, right? So, you know, there's like, sometimes it doesn't have to be that hard. You just make small changes that can help people, right? You know, here is something that native English speakers, you know, make a lot of mistakes on. You just add apostrophe, RE. I mean, to be honest, this is like 3x as much of effort as the previous one where I update a number, right? Because I'm taking, that's like 3 keystrokes. But anyway, so really quick briefer on this, right? I was a mechanical engineer. You know, I fell in love with Ethereum early on. Did the law school thing, didn't like law, so started programming, and I actually got into professionally working on, you know, so-called Web3 or crypto in 2017. I wanted to in 2014 because that's when I read the white paper, but there were no jobs, right? And the way I got started was actually Truffle at the time was one of the larger smart contract frameworks, and I was able to contribute to this open source repository of example projects. It's kind of like a Hello World project, like just very basic template projects. And then, you know, through that, I was able to basically talk to people at Consensus, and I was saying, hey, let's get on a call. Can you give me maintainer privileges? Because I wanted to make contributions faster and not have to wait for them to approve my PRs, right? So then I got on a call with them, and actually they just offered me a job for more money than I ever made at that time. Because, you know, I was just a freelancer doing this out of my own passion, right? But that's how I got my first professional career in the blockchain, essentially. So yeah, eventually I did a couple DeFi projects, etc., and then I joined the Ethereum Foundation, and now I'm working on the founder success team. I'll be honest, this presentation was made for actually a bunch of PhDs in Hong Kong's Polytechnic University. So I actually walked them through how to make GitHub contributions. I'm going to go really quick through this because I only have 20 minutes, and that was a 45-minute presentation. What we want to do is make an issue. We copy the repo, so-called fork it, and download it locally. And then I use terms like PR, for example. What is PR? It's basically pull request. I'm requesting for you to pull in my changes, right? That's what PRs are. Make the changes, you know. There's also like different things you should be aware of. Sometimes repositories have readmes, contribution.mds. These are ways of, you know, how to respect the repository and be able to make contributions that are, you know, more likely to be accepted, for example. You know, this is just going through the specifics, even giving you the, I mean, you don't need this now with the LLMs, but we got here. Yep, okay, so a good pull request is also, in some ways, I think this is something that maybe in Japan, people might appreciate more, right? How do we write something that makes sure that the other person will have an easy time to take care of your pull request, right? You want to have a good title, you want to have a good branch name, right? You want to link to specifically what issue you're trying to fix, describe what changes you made, and even give other people like the instructions how to test it, how to make sure, right? How to give the other person the confidence that this is something that they are able to merge in. And of course, you know, add any context or screenshots as possible. The key is to make the reviewer as comfortable as possible. And this is actually, sometimes I feel like whenever I go really deep into this, there's a kind of like a hint of omotenashi there. Like, you know, 相手のためにどうやってこの PR 作るの感じですね。So that's how you can get started. You can see I make a lot of use of emojis here. They do the heavy lifting. There's something called the goodfirstissue.dev. So if you've never made an open source contribution, like I said, it could be just spelling changes, right? It could be grammar changes, it could be anything. You can go to goodfirstissue.dev, and then there's a whole bunch of different things. You can filter by different things as well and get started doing that. This is when I was working on the ZK side of things, privacy and scaling explorations at the Ethereum Foundation. We actually created a specific tracker for good first issues. And I was also telling, I use this particular slide for our students as well. As our students, by the way, are now the founders of ZK Tokyo, a really great group, and I'm very proud of them. One thing that I really encourage people to do is, like, if you don't like something, don't just, just like, if you think it's not good enough, make a change, right? Change the world so that it becomes better, right? That's how we can win together. So if you don't like the UI, please make a PR for anything, as long as open source, of course, right? Content-based repos, sometimes, I think way back when, this was maybe like 7 years ago, I was just comparing different libraries, right? This was basically a blog post, but I put it into GitHub, and then many people liked it, and many people upvoted on Twitter. So like, sometimes it doesn't have to be code, right? It can just be something that you think is valuable, and people can enjoy that as well, and also contribute to it too. So start your own project, improve what you use, kind of look at what you're already doing, what are you using, and really think about that, right? What about Ethereum? Talk about why Ethereum is important. Institutions are already here, a lot of things going on. I don't need to tell you guys this. I think this is pretty out there already. In terms of the developer space, even though, like, I think last year Solana had higher developer growth, but that doesn't mean that actually, I mean, Ethereum still has the biggest developer pool, despite the growth being a little bit lagging behind a certain other place. Because obviously, there's, it's, of course, it's asymptotic to some degree, right? Toolkit, and if people are just getting started in building for Ethereum, Foundry, Hardhat, WagMe, that's probably what I'd recommend right now. Not Truffle, even though I was on the team for like a good 2-3 years. These are Foundry if you just want to get started with Solidity. Hardhat if you're more of a JavaScript type of person, and on the front end, WagMe does most of the heavy lifting. So here's just some screenshots from these things. That's not that important. Where to start? Ethereum.org. So I'm on the Ethereum founder success team. Well, I lead the team, and basically we have Ethereum.org/founders. That's probably, like, if you're a founder and you want some support, that's where I would encourage you to go, or just like hit me up after this talk. For people who are really new to coding Solidity or just getting on the blockchain, the BittoGitto is pretty good. That's led by Austin Griffith. Rare Skills, if you want to get into some zero-knowledge proofs, that kind of thing. Pro Crypto, Rare Skills is a great place to start as well. Yeah, and they have actually non-zero-knowledge proof stuff as well. Rare Skills is a great project that my friend Jeffrey started. So taking action is another. I think I only have 2 minutes, but so I also started the Ethereum Vancouver meetup because I lived in Vancouver for 5 years thanks to COVID. When you create a meetup, when you create a community, sometimes it's quite hard to find a place and get started, and it seems very overwhelming, right? But we actually started the Ethereum Vancouver community on the beach in February, which was like very, very cold. It was like 12 degrees, 10 degrees, right? But 20 people actually sat outside, and we just talked for like 2 hours. And one thing that I want to kind of make sure you guys know is that we can always start things. We can always start things. I can start a meetup right now by asking you guys to chat with me outside and be like, hey, let's call this a meetup and let's meet again next week. And that's exactly what we did for Ethereum Vancouver. And now it's been running for 3 years, and people are running it without my touching. To be honest, I haven't even been there for like almost a year now. But like, I think we were able to grow new leaders and make it sustainable. So I think taking action is really important, and you can always do things much simpler, much quicker, and easier than you think. I think that's really important. Okay, so this is like one of our things. Sometimes we don't even have a good topic, and we just look at memes, right? Because sometimes it's just coming out, being a community, that's the most important thing. You don't have to have like the most mind-blowing presentations every time. I mean, my presentation today is not that mind-blowing, right? So, yeah, living example. So yeah, conclusion: open source is important. You can start building. Everything matters, even if it's small, right? Open source is really important for collaboration, skill building, career, all that stuff. And thank you so much. I'm Adrian Lee from the Founder Success Team, and thanks for listening and coming out here on a Friday morning.
Thank you very much. ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。